What we're experiencing, Joanna Macy calls the Great Turning. It's the breakdown of the exploitative, late-stage capitalist model, where we all try to get as much as we can, and ends up becoming the harbinger of the possibility of interdependence. And when it breaks down, that Great Turning says, we will use this time to turn this world into something better and to truly care for one another. The possibility starts with us, says Jack Kornfield in Heart Wisdom, episode 289. Still we rise, the Bodhisattvas of the Great Turning. This is a video episode taking place for Inside LA. It features Trudy Goodman, so you know it's going to be a good one when Jack and Trudy are having some fun and some deep conversation on stage. And if you've been listening to the more recent episodes or have taken Jack's new free course, Stand Up for Compassion, you'll recognize some of these themes that Jack is uncovering during this time. The first of which being this great turning. This, as Raghu Marcus would say, dangerous opportunity. As the world turns, so do we have the opportunity to turn with it, even if it's scary, even if things look grim. What the Great Turning says is that if things must change, which they must, look at the momentums that we're in right now. That if we're given this opportunity to change, let's make this change beautifully. Let's bring into the world what we've been trying to bring into our hearts with this meditation practice. Can we now put that into action? The metaphor that Jack has been using is the imaginal cells of the butterfly, that this great turning is a chrysalis of sorts, and that each of us has our duty to imagine this beautiful new society through us, rather than staying depressed and cynical, which is only going to allow the old momentums to continue to perpetuate. So what Trudy and Jack share here is that the possibility starts with us. But how do we do that? One method Jack shares is, he says, love people and feed people. That's Ram Dass's guru's prescription for enlightenment. Want to get enlightened? Love and feed people. So that seems like a far cry from sit down in meditation and clear your mind and chant this mantra and remember the Brahma Viharas and the Paramitas. There's actually a story where Ram Dass goes up to Maharaji, his guru, and says, Maharaji, enlighten me, raise my kundalini right now. I want to be done with it. I know you can do it. Do it. But the instructions that were always given by Maharaji, especially around inquiries like this, were to love people, serve people, feed people, and remember God, remember our inexorable interconnection, which is difficult sometimes. But this is the way home. The road home is through each other. What these instructions are saying is that we're no longer these lone wolves on the spiritual path trying to become the most mindful. We are connected, and our awakening is each other's awakening. And this is the perspective, the view, the life of the Bodhisattva. To extend the circle of compassion to everyone, including yourself, as Jack says. But this can be difficult. I know I like to hide my spirituality behind podcasts and just chanting alone, and I guess leaning in to my fear of connection. But Trudy says something in this podcast that was just a wake-up call for me. I've spent so much of my life scared of being alone in the future, just the fear of abandonment, just an uneasiness of being alone sometimes. not really knowing what to do with it, thinking there was some big internal thing I had to work through and then I would be not lonely. But what Trudy says here is something so simple and poignant. The prescription for loneliness is community. I don't know why I never thought of that. Oh, you're lonely? Go hang out with community. Go find other people chanting. Go find other people meditating. Go to a soup kitchen. Go find an electronic show and dance. Go to a knitting class. Whatever it is for you, go. Connect. This is how we heal. At the end of the podcast, I left in a segment that I would normally leave out because it's Trudy speaking directly to the students who are at Inside LA. Kind of retreat banter, if you will. But I left it in as the last statement of the podcast because it is, I don't know if you've ever listened to podcasts before, and it's like the teachers speaking to the audience that was there at the time, but it just feels sometimes like, okay, here is a nugget that for some reason the universe just completely wrapped up for me, and these are my instructions. Ooh, I'm hearing it from the inside out. Well, this was it for me. The podcast ends with Trudy saying, sorry to spoiler alert, but hey everyone here, before you leave, go up to somebody and say hello, introduce yourself. And the revolutionary opportunity of connection that offers us, I don't want to brush over. I was walking through the park the other day, and this beautiful scent wafted to my nostrils, and I had to figure out where that was coming from. So I probably looked a little crazy, walking around the park, sniffing my way to wherever the source was. But I finally saw someone laying down on a blanket, incense from India, just billowing out. And I wanted to go say hello because the vibe was so nice. And I also wanted to really find out what that incense was because I wanted that. And my next thought was, oh, you can't go talk with random people. That's weird. And then I remembered what Trudy said. Go say hello to someone. And I recognized that that was a nudge from the universe to go have a conversation. And it was a beautiful conversation. And I got the incense. And it is now wafting in my new place. And it's all because I listened to the instructions of the universe through Jack and Trudy in this amazing Heart Wisdom podcast, episode 289, Still We Rise, the Bodhisattvas of the Great Turning. That's you, by the way. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you help others through the authenticity of your being. And may you imagine a beautiful new world connected in this time of the Great Turning. Namaste.
So it is Easter morning. It's the last day of Passover. And here's the teachings I want to offer in one poetic line from Pablo Neruda. He writes, "You can pick all the flowers, but you can't stop the spring." And no matter what's happening in this world, there is a much bigger force of life itself that was breathing you, that's part of every cell of your being and the whole magic show of life. You can pick all the flowers, but you can't stop the spring. That's really the meaning of these celebrations. Feels so good to come together And for me to be back here with you, Trudy, and back in this space at Olympic inside LA. And I have a lot of feelings as I've come this morning, some tender and almost tearful, some grief for the world and all that's happening out there, some heartened by our being together, all of these. And it is a wild and challenging time. Nationally, globally, we know this. Missiles every day in some places, increasing violence, hungry children, climate, loss of species, cultural anxiety. I mean, when we come to sit, all that is with us and our personal lives. Alison Luderman, great poet, wrote just the last line or so, last lines, where she talks about the helplessness at times of bearing witness to the soft bodies of children on battlegrounds. Because suffering does not ennoble, she writes as a Jewish person, because suffering does not ennoble, and every people has been chosen, and Jerusalem is a crossroads and a crucible, a test of humanity we have thus far failed to pass. So we sit with the springtime and the beauty and also the suffering that human beings create, and we know. And of course, it's exacerbated by the media. All the streams of media that we now have coming in all these different directions, you know. And the aim of the media, put by the political commentator H.L. Mencken years ago, he said, the whole aim of politics is to frighten the populace, so you will vote to get them to protect you. They want you to be afraid in some way. And they, you can feel, is the kind of cultural, political consciousness that's being created in little pieces, but somehow collectively. And certainly in the political sphere, that's what politics is about. They want you to fear each other. And it's been so my whole life. The enemy du jour, it was the communists, right? It was the gays. It was the Russians, or it was the Chinese. It's the blacks, the browns, the yellow people, you know, the red people, people coming over the border. Now it's the immigrants. Be afraid. There's 11 million undocumented people. We live together. It's fine. And those undocumented people commit less crimes than the documented people, like y'all, right? So let's get real about it. I carry red cards with me and give them out by the hundreds. We'll put some out for you that are a simple statement that an undocumented person can give to the ICE that says in Spanish, English, other, I do not wish to speak with you or answer your questions or sign or hand you any documents based on my Fifth Amendment rights under the Constitution. I do not give you permission to enter my home without a written warrant and my name on it based on the Fourth Amendment rights. It's come to this, but they or the system turns us against one another. And we're not. We're not against one another. What we're experiencing, Joanna Macy calls it the great turning. She's really our kind of extraordinary visionary. And it's the breakdown of the exploitive late-stage capitalist model where we get as much as we can and the harbinger of the possibility of interdependence. When it breaks down, that turning says, will we use this time to turn to something better, to care for one another? And of course, we're living with the truth of uncertainty. My teacher, Ajahn Chah, you'd ask him things and he'd laugh. He'd say, uncertain, isn't it? Right? How's that to live with? You thought it wasn't uncertain, baby? It is uncertain. We are living it. And it changes very quickly, almost as quickly as the tariffs. It says in the sutras, the tariffs and karma can change as quickly as the swish of a horse's tail. Right? The problems seem really big and really painful and really hard and really large and huge. So what do we have in the face of these? Something bigger. We have the Bodhisattva Vows. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them all. And when you take those Bodhisattva vows, which you can inwardly or you do formally when you sit in Zen, sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them all. Of course, save is the wrong word because when you go home to try to save your family, they're not really very interested, right? So it has to mean something else. I vow to liberate all beings. And then you say, how long? And it says, immeasurable time. Like that beautiful Ojibwa saying, sometimes I go about pitying myself when all the while I'm being carried by great winds across the sky. The Bodhisattva vows exist in a frame of heart and spirit that are so much bigger than the cycles of the economy and the politics and so forth. That's what we have. We have the noble truths. The truth of suffering. Anybody not seen it? Raise your hand. You can have your money back, right? We have the causes of suffering in the fire sermon, the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance. The more greed, notice that. The more hatred, the more ignorance, the more suffering there'll be. But then there's the opposite. There's the path to the end. The opposite of greed is generosity. The opposite of hatred is love. The opposite of ignorance is wisdom and truth. There's a path of loving awareness and compassion and practices of awareness, practices of compassion, and practices of undying values, sila, virtue. From one of the important sutras and texts. Others will be cruel. I shall be kind. Thus one should incline the heart. Others will speak falsely. I shall speak the truth. Thus one should incline the heart. Others will exploit and steal. I shall be honest and generous. Thus we shall incline the heart. These are really timeless, huge principles. And it doesn't matter the political cycle, the particular, empires that come and go. They are the way things are. The Dharma, one of its meanings is the way things are. The laws. And it starts the possibility with us. When a moth or a butterfly is gestating in a chrysalis. It used to be a little caterpillar of some kind or other. And I want to include the moths because there are some really cool moths out there. It's not just those fancy-ass butterflies, right? When they go into a chrysalis, it's not like, okay, now I'm going to sprout wings. But they actually dissolve into a kind of organic, gooey mess. That's the way that it works biologically. You may have experienced that of yourself at certain times in your life. And then there are certain cells that the biologists have named imaginal cells that begin to organize all that gooey mess into a new creature. And they imagine that they can fly. And they put themselves together and grow wings so that when the chrysalis opens, they can fly. You become the imaginal cells in these times. Things fall apart, but in you is the understanding that compassion is big enough to hold all this, that the heart is big enough to hold all this, that the Dharma is big enough to shine the way through empires and changes and crises and beauty, that that's what we have, that the Bodhisattva can carry on liberating beings from suffering, however long it takes. And of course, it starts with one person at a time. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh's, if there's only one person on the boat who remains calm and centered, it's enough. It shows the way. But then it turns out that the imaginal cells look around and say, Trudy, will you be my imaginal cell friend? You know? And then what we have is another huge power, which is community. One of the three gems. We come together. And here we've come together with the first part of mindful loving awareness, sati, mindfulness, to quiet the mind, tend and listen to the heart. Such an important thing to do when the world gets a little crazy is to step back. Turn off the news, please. You get the point. Honestly, you do. So you quiet the mind, tend the heart. The word in Pali for mindfulness is sati, but it's actually a compound word, sati sampajanya. Sati is mindful presence, and sampajanya is a more broad context. You could call it mindful response, like breathing in and breathing out. Centered, mindful presence. And then what? Mindful response. You turn off the news, but what then? You love people, you feed them, you care for them, you stand up for what matters. I've been tracking, as we do in the world of people who are doing the Bodhisattva work globally, the chef Jose Andres, who started World Central Kitchen, you know, in Puerto Rico after the hurricane, and now working in lots of countries, they have served 200 million meals from a very small beginning. You know, he was a New York Michelin fancy-ass chef, right? What else can I do? All right, I got a Michelin star. What else? Is there anything more interesting to do? How about love people and feed them, which is Ram Dass's guru's prescription for enlightenment. You want to get enlightened? Love people and feed them. And so we can care. We can make a difference. And it makes a difference. This is Howard Zinn, author of The People's History of the United States. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It's based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we choose to see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something, to respond. But if we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act wherever we are, and the possibility of sending the spinning top of the world in the right direction. So it actually becomes a Dharmic practice to see cheer and beauty, to live with joy, to plant flowers and tend them in your garden, to care for one another. Because every bad news story, and there's lots and lots of them, while we've been sitting here for this less than an hour, there have also been 8 billion acts of kindness that don't make the news. Some mother putting warm tortillas on the table for her child, and some person putting rice gruel on the table for their daughter or their son, their beloved, somebody holding the door for another person, somebody just stopping at the damn red light so somebody can go through the green and not have an accident. We live with care for one another, and we take it for granted, but it's actually who we are in its essence. And no one can take this. You have your Buddha nature. You have your dignity. You have the spirit and care born into you. And then you become a make-weight. So make-weight is the term when you go into the marketplace to buy papayas or walnuts or whatever. You go in the old-time marketplace, they hold out the scales, right? And they put the fruit on one side. All right, here's the tangerines. And then they put some weights on the other. You want a kilo worth. And they put weights in, and it starts to balance. But it's not quite balanced. And then at the end, there's this little set of weights. They make them very cute sometimes, like little ducks or little, animals. And they put a couple on, and then it just comes to balance. And those little ducks, that's you, by the way, are the things that turn the whole scale, that move it so that it comes into balance. So when you remember your Bodhisattva vows, when you quiet your mind, and when we come together in community, and then you get up, and you love people and feed them, you become the make-weight, the carrier of the Dharma, the person that makes the difference on the boat. So thank you. Sorry, Miss Trudy, I went on for a bit.
Same. Thank you, Jack. That was beautiful. A really beautiful talk. But I do want to leave time for us to have some exchange. So I'm going to shorten mine, and I'm going to be teaching here again in 3 weeks, which I'm really excited about, that I get to come back so soon. So please come back then. And I'm really grateful to be able to come here and meditate with all of you, because sitting together is so helpful. This is really a hard time. And of course, some people are cheering, some people are terrified, but this person feels this is a really hard and terrible time in our country. And I take heart and comfort in the teaching anicca vata sankhara. All things are impermanent. The way things are right now is not the way things are always going to be. That really helps to remember that. Impermanence is such good news when things are not going your way. I don't have to say the corollary of that. But when we're here and we experience the ground of our being, and for you it might feel like the earth, or maybe it's the wide sky of awareness, however you connect with your heart, when we do this together, when we're here and we do this, we realize this is our birthright. This is our innate capacity. And there's nothing that can ruin or damage this. I mean, we can get completely into ruminating or obsessing or being in the grip of a lot of terrible thinking, but always underneath, if we just take the time and have company to quiet down, we can connect with our hearts. And I wanted to just say a few words about this last day of Passover and Easter. Passover celebrates the ancient story of a people freed from enslavement. But then I think for us today, we can just get a feeling for it. Like, if you're willing, make a really tight fist right now, just tight as you can, so that your fingernails are digging into your palms. And I know we don't usually teach techniques of self-mutilation here, but just do it for a minute. Tight, 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 tight. Tight, tight. And then release your hand. You can feel the blood kind of flowing back and the fingers moving again. And I think that is the Passover meaning, that we go from a place that's very tight and constricted. And in whatever way we experience that tightness and contraction and feeling of being stuck or trapped, that we go from that place to a sense of relaxation, of ease, of more freedom from whatever is holding us back. And that, when I think of that definition of Passover, it's very general, but then it's something I can connect with. And maybe you can too. And then I've done some research about Easter. Easter, the word Easter is actually from a pagan goddess named, I don't know how to pronounce it because nobody says her name anymore. It's from really, very, very ancient times. Eostre, E-O-S-T-R-E. She's the goddess of dawn. And she's, dawn is such a beautiful, like spring, it's such a beautiful symbol of renewal and rebirth. But unlike spring, dawn comes every day. That's the good news about dawn. Spring only comes once a year, but dawn comes every day. And I think of the commonality between these holidays. I haven't taken communion in church, although I have gone to church, but I noticed that they have these wafers that are unleavened bread. They're basically crackers, like matzah, right? Like matzah. And they're having, there's wine and Lamb of God and the flesh, body of Christ. And it just feels very evocative to me of Passover in some ways. And these pagan holidays, what Christianity did with these pagan holidays is just got right on top of them and changed the meaning of them. We're watching some of that happen right now. But when I was looking into where does Easter come from, And we know it's like Passover. Spring is in the air, and there's flowers, and it's spring. But with Easter, there's bunnies and eggs. Bunnies don't lay eggs. I don't know where the bunny part comes from, or the eggs for that matter, although eggs, right, renewal, birth, eggs, yes. So I want to just invite you to this scene, and imagine when this is taking place. So like the center today, so beautifully decorated with flowers. We're in a home, very beautifully decorated with flowers, and the whole family has picked out their Sunday best and decked out in their beautiful clothing. There's going to be a sunrise worship service and to celebrate the renewal of life. And everyone's looking forward, excuse me, vegans, this is just imaginary, to a succulent ham with all the trimmings. And it's going to be a thrilling day. After all, it's one of the great holidays of the year, great religious holidays of the year. So you think Easter, right? No, this is the description of an ancient Babylonian family, 2,000 years before Christ. It's so interesting, isn't it? They're honoring the resurrection of their God, who was brought back to life from the underworld by his mother, who also happens to be his wife. I know, it sounds bad. But the goddess Ishtar was both the mother and the consort of this resurrected God. And to us, that sounds, pretty horrible, but it's symbolic. It reflects her, really, we understand, we can laugh, but it really reflects her role as both the giver of life, the sustainer of life, and of both. She's really both. And so Ishtar is pronounced Easter in a lot of dialects, right? And, I just point this out because of what's going on in our country right now, like the commonality. We had the joy, the pleasure of meeting Vivek Murtry the other day, who was our nation's Surgeon General for I think 8 out of the last 10 years, a lot of years, under Biden and before under Obama as well. And before he left office, before this administration, he wrote a prescription for America. And he wrote this prescription for America after traveling all around the country and listening to people of all ages, young people, kids, college kids, adults, old people, people of all ages. And the one theme that sort of was threaded through all the people that he talked to was loneliness and lack of connection. So his prescription for us is this. That was actually appropriate, but I didn't mean to. It's this. It's community. It's finding community wherever you can. And before you leave, I really want you to stay and talk to somebody, the person next to you, or I know, take an avocado, and I can't see exactly, but it looks like there's snacks out there. So yeah, stay. And community can be a conversation that you initiate with somebody that you might not have had otherwise. But his prescription is for the refuge that Jack was talking about, the refuge in Sangha, the refuge in community, however, wherever you find it. So I was actually going to go on, but I'm going to stop for now. And I want to share with you a poem that is, for me, today's poem. And it's from Maya Angelou, and it's called Still I Rise. I won't read the whole poem, but she says, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I rise. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide. Welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I rise, I rise, I rise. And for all of us, maybe we have a bad dream, but dawn comes and brings the light. Maybe we're ashamed of things being done in our country in our name right now, but still we get out of bed, we come to Insight LA, we find community, we practice together, and we give each other our hearts and our hope so that we will rise to meet this moment. And each one of us has different talents and different capacities and different ways that we communicate with each other. And some of us, our friend Catherine, who's here, is going to enter a 3-year retreat this summer. Yes, she's in the gray sweater over there smiling. Some of us, are going to be praying and meditating intensively for 3 years for this world. We all have our different ways of expressing ourselves, and we all have a part to play, and no part is too small. It all really matters. And I'll talk some more about that in 3 weeks. But for now, I want to open for some conversation with you. I love this part the best, the interactive part, because I always feel then I know what I'm saying is something you actually want to hear. If you ask a question and we respond in some way. And we don't call this Q&A anymore because we don't have the answers. Well, I'll speak for myself. Maybe Jack does. I don't have the answers, but I do respond. We can respond to each other. So, is there a mic? Yes, great. Alexis, and thank you for your setting up and making this so great today.
Question. What advice, compassion was obviously a big theme, as it always is, but what advice would you offer for those of us who are afraid to open our hearts too much because their fear is that the tears will never stop falling?
The fear is what?
The tears will never stop falling.
Oh, yeah. What a beautiful question, Rick. Thank you. The fear is the problem, not the tears. Because the tears, tears feel endless, bottomless when they don't have a chance to fall. When they get to fall, they fall, and sometimes they fall and fall and fall, but they stop because anicca vata sankhara. Tears too are impermanent. They cannot go on forever, even though it feels like they will. And it's really like that with all the intense emotions that we're afraid will flood and destroy us in some way, drown us if it's tears. And so, and of course, knowing you a little bit over all these years, I feel safe in telling you that it's okay to cry. And what if you gave yourself the rest of the day to cry and see what happens? And see what happens. And let us know. I know you're going to be here 3 weeks from now.
You'll be crying.
You are not going to be in a puddle. You may be in a puddle, but you'll be Rick. You won't just be the puddle. That's what I meant. Thank you. Yeah, behind. Okay. Here. Hi. Oops. Then you.
Yeah, it's also such a blessing to be here with the two of you. So thank you. My practice has evolved a lot in the past year and has become so supportive in many ways. And yet I feel like there's a whole other world of issues that I'm dealing with, specifically with regards to like childhood trauma that's very intense, that the Dharma doesn't seem to penetrate. And in some ways, it feels like the deeper my practice gets in other areas of my life, the more it feels divided, that there's this whole dark cloud that, I am dealing with in other ways, but is just becoming increasingly difficult and feels inaccessible with this practice. And I would love to find a way to have this help that part as well.
That's so beautiful, because what you're describing is your practice getting stronger and deeper. And then there's this thing that feels incompatible in some way. Like, wait a minute, there's this. And what do I do about this? Do you do therapy?
A lot.
Because that's one way. Do you do any body-based therapy?
I do, but it's really challenging. It's quite triggering. And
you can do a little bit, touch. Well, with trauma and with the meditation, sitting with trauma, we practice touch and go. Touch and go. You can't just dive in there or it gets too much. It's overwhelming. And it can actually even be re-traumatizing. So just little by little by little, and trust. When
That's what's so hard for me is the doubt.
When Jack was talking about trust at the beginning of the guided meditation, that is the key, to trust that this is not, the trauma is not, it's part of who you are. It did happen, whatever it is. That's true. But look you've had a whole life. It is not all of who you are. And as you said, in your practice in other areas is getting deeper and deeper, right? So to trust that part of who you are with the intention to care for that part, that's the hard, right? To trust that caring for that part and allowing it to be seen and held little by little by little, that it really will not torment you. It's not going to go away. Things that we've lived through don't go away. But I am speaking also from personal experience. It loses its charge. It's just a memory like your other memories. And it isn't going to keep you up at night and torment you anymore. Promise. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Susanna. Thanks so much for having all of us here today. I had a question. So I'm a nurse working in GI procedure center. So I have people going in for generally simple procedures, but they're going under anesthesia. They're very nervous. And I keep having this question either with my patients, like moments before they're going in, or with like a family member, or even like someone I meet on the street in a store. When you have just a few moments with someone, but you can tell that they're in almost a crisis state of anxiety, what is a simple phrase or a gentle invitation to offer what I've learned here in the meditation community, or because I feel my colleagues are often oh, think about something else, pick out your favorite beach. And I'm what if we were just not avoiding what's going on, or a difficult conversation comes up and we're well, let's leave that. How do I just gently, simply, not forcefully invite someone into just a moment of mindfulness when you have a very short amount of time?
So what have you learned that works?
Eye contact and
yes,
and trying to make sure I am calm myself.
Right. So you make eye contact, and then you're calm in yourself, and already that, without any words, that communicates something. And then you say something spontaneous that's calming and steadying. Trust that it's okay. What has anybody else learned without the mic? Just raise your hand. What helps? Sending love, metta, good. everything changes. Just acknowledging this is scary and it's okay. It'll be fine. Anyone else?
Yes. Softening your belly, noticing where your stomach's tight.
What's that? Deep breath. All right, let's breathe. It's a beautiful question and a great thing to be able to do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And we just sit for a moment. I also asked you to please, after we have a moment of meditation together, well, I'll tell you then. Let's sit together just for a moment. At the end of a period of practice and study together, we share the benefit, the goodness, whatever's been helpful. We offer the goodness of our practice to all beings everywhere, without exception. May all beings be happy, safe, healthy, and free. So what I would like you to do before you leave, besides take an avocado, have a snack, is to turn to the person or somebody next to you, near you, and say hi. Just introduce yourself if you don't know people here. I see people waving online. Yes, hi, we see
Hi
you.
out there.
Welcome, we're happy you're here.